Hey, it's Clinton again. This time we're looking at the exercise for week 5, which is creating the Byne student ID using HTML and CSS. So this is just a arbitrary exercise I came up with based on a somewhat similar example I found, but I adapted it to Byne and to the needs of this class. So in this exercise, we're going to be working in both HTML and CSS, which is a little different from the exercises you've done in the past. If you have not already, go ahead and accept the assignment in Google Classroom, open it up in GitHub Classroom, and open up your code spaces for this repository. So you see on the screen, I've already got code spaces up, and let's jump right in. So like I said, this is a little bit different than the past assignments you've done in that we have to work in both the HTML and in the CSS files. Now, similar to the last exercises you've done, the instructions are embedded in these two files already. You just need to look for the little googly eyes emoji, and the instructions are next to those, below them, etc. So let's work through this. Before we get started on actually writing the code, go ahead and install the live preview extension again. So we'll want that so we can look at the work as we make our changes. Again, we click install, and if we flip over to the HTML file, we just need to click this little icon in the top right. It's got a little magnifying glass and it looks like a split rectangle. So when we click that, you're going to see an alert pop up down here in the bottom right corner of your screen saying that your app is now running on port 3000. If you, as with before, it doesn't show up directly in the Visual Studio Code environment here, but we can click open in browser and it will open up in a separate tab. And of course, we click on the HTML file to see our work. And right now there's nothing, which is, what we expect. So let's close this tab and let's go ahead and start working here. So the first instruction says add your name here using H1. So we're going to add our H1 tags. I'll type my name in here. I'll save, and that automatically saves. We can flip over, refresh, and there's my name. Now we'll skip down. Here we're going to insert the Byne logo. So I've already provided this Byne logo in the images repository as with previous assignments. And you'll see the different image files here. So the one we're interested in is Byne logo. And of course, we use an image tag. Now recall from several weeks ago, the image tag is img, and it has an attribute that tells the browser where to find the image file. That attribute is src, which is short for source. And we'll just type in images, because if you look up here, the image is in the images directory. And so we have to specify that directory, / and then the name of the file, which is byne_logo.png. And then it is a void tag or a self-closing tag. So we just put / and then the greater than sign to close out that tag. Now, I created this as an aside because I figured, we're trying to be semantic. So the entire ID is a main tag. The name at the top of the ID is a section, and if you look at the result, you can kind of see that laid out this way. So section, right? So there's the name, and then we have another section with the content, which is the middle, and then we have a section at the bottom for the school. So you see school. Now, the image itself, of the school's logo is kind of in the background, so I made that an aside because it's not really important. And then we have the actual article, which is where all your details are. And then we have another aside with, which is where your student photo will go. So you can kind of see how that's laid out. And so let's move forward with the article, which is the main content where your information goes. And we, title that using H2 tags because, the H1 is the name. That's for everything. And this is just sort of, tells the person reading it this is where the details are. So we'll use a little bit lower level heading to indicate it's a little less significant than the name at the top. And then finally, we'll add the different details here. And each of those goes in a paragraph tag. So we'll have, your ID number, which is totally fictitious. And then we'll have your date of birth. All right, and please make this fictitious as well. So we'll do that. And the reason I don't want you putting your actual details in here, because that makes, that is a great way to get your identity stolen. So let's not do that. And then the school year, we can say school year 24-25. And then finally we'll put in and you can use your, actual Byne email address. No big deal there. So I'll use mine. All right, so let's save that and go look at our results. So, you can see the logo is absolutely enormous. The details are not very pretty. So that is a far cry from what we're going to work toward. So you can see there's a lot of power in CSS to go from this to the final result, which we will get there. All right, and let's add our photo. So I decided to use a Mickey Mouse photo here. You are welcome to use a real photo of yourself if you wish. Totally up to you. So I'm just going to use Mickey. I'll save that. And then, so I'll flip back over, and I'm going to upload that. So upload my Mickey photo from my downloads folder. There we go. So I'll put that in the images directory again. So we'll do image, again, source, and then we will add, so images is the directory. We'll go to Mickey, and we'll save, make sure that auto saves. We'll refresh our preview here, and you can see there's Mickey. All right, and then finally we're going to add the actual school name at the bottom here. And of course we're using H2 tags again for this. And we'll say Byne Christian School. And then we'll flip over and make sure that shows up at the bottom. It does. Cool. All right. So that is all of the HTML. All right. Pretty easy, right? So we can close out. Well, let's leave this open for the moment. We'll just kind of drag this off to the side here so I can reference the tag structure. Then I'm going to open my CSS here on the right. All right, so now we need to go through here and look for the googly eyes. So the first step is to create a CSS rule that targets the HTML element. All right, remember that is the root element. And so we're going to start off up here. So this is our type selector, if you remember. It was the tag name. All right. And then we're going to use the font family property, CSS property. And we're going to set that to sans serif. And that means, text that does not have the cute little decorations at the edges of the characters, right? So it's like fonts like Arial or, Helvetica and things like that. So then we'll also set the font size to 14 pixels. And if you recall from class, setting the font size in the HTML tag allows us to use relative units from here on out. So we'll be able to use like rem units that are based on this setting. All right, next we're going to create a CSS rule that targets all H1, H2, and P elements that sets their margin and padding to 0. So if we go back over here to our preview, we can right-click on an H1, H2, or P tag. And when I hover over the element on the right, you'll notice the orange above and below the text. That is the margins above and below it. So there's a lot of extra space in there. Same is true for the P tags, the paragraph tags. And if we're going to cram everything into a little ID like this, then we don't need all that extra space. If we do need space, we want to add it explicitly. So we're going to remove the implicit margin that's added automatically by the browser. So we'll set margin to 0 and the padding as well. So we get rid of all of that. So let's flip over and see what we've done so far. All right, so far the changes we've made is we converted the font to sans serif, we've shrunk the font a little bit, and we've removed extra padding. So we refresh, and you should notice those changes. So you see the font changed to a sans serif. Now each line of text is bumped right up against the others, so it's much more compact. All right, let's move on. So here we're going to replace this selector with the main element. So this is a type selector targeting the main element. So we'll do that. And that's going to convert this to a flex layout and a column. So you won't see a lot of difference just yet. You will see the background applied automatically. So I did use a linear gradient, which is a very cool feature of CSS, and that's how we get the that kind of shading you see in the background. And then we're going to change the border radius to 10 pixels. So that's going to give us those curved corners. We're going to add a little margin in here, so that'll keep it 20 pixels. So you see how that's about 20 pixels from the edge. The text is lined up. The same for the picture here. We're going to, constrain the width and the height. And then you'll notice that the section, so this is going to apply a section with the ID name inside of main. So it'll apply here. And then, so let's go, we made those changes. Let's go check it out and see what we've got so far. All right, so you can see it is trying to fit the content in there, but the content just gets blown out by these massive images. But you are starting to see our ID card take shape here. So let's move forward. All right, so we're going to make the corners of the ID card rounded to approximately 10 pixels. Add a margin of 20. So it looks like most of this is done for you. So moving down, we're going to so this section forms the header. So we set the background color to dark blue, which is done. Add some padding. Looks like I did that for you. Borders there. All right, so down here, I did leave some of this undone. So let's see, we've got to add an H1 that is nested. And we want to set the font color to white. So we're going to use the color property. And the font family can be the same font used on Byne's website. So let's go find that. Let's go find out what that font is. So that's right here, I think. So let's see. It looks like that is, let's see. Rooney-web. Let's just copy that. We'll copy that Rooney-web and we will paste that in there. All right, and that should affect your name. All right, so let's flip over to our preview and see if that works. All right, there we go. So it did change it. Okay, so you see that changed. What else? We want to center the text. So we'll use the text-align and set that to center. And that should, move that into the center of the card. Cool. So we got that working. That's all of those. Now down here, we want to target the section with the ID of content. So we use a type selector followed by an ID selector. And then down here, we want the image is nested in this aside. So here's the aside. If you look over on the right, you'll see there's the aside. The ID does match. Byne logo, Byne logo. So we did absolutely position that image. We'll talk about that a little later, probably next week or the one after. The Z index, don't worry about that. So we did move it 25 pixels from the left and 60% from the top of the card. So this is all just positioning it. So we did have to position it here, otherwise it'd be butted right up against the top or the Byne logo. So you notice we positioned it. We did move it off, so some of it's getting cut off. We did move it up quite a bit from its natural position. And what we want to do is constrain the width because it's absolutely enormous right now. So let's constrain the width. So we're going to set the width of the logo to 250 pixels. And the height will scale automatically to keep the ratio correct. So it will proportionally scale the height down. And then we want it to be somewhat transparent. So we're going to change the opacity to be barely visible, okay? All right, so let's go check out our results now. All right, cool. So you do see, it looks like Mickey Mouse is still blowing things way out of proportion. So we got to get down there and fix him. So the next thing we need to do is this article holds a student's details. So we're talking about this part here. And the top and bottom padding we want to be 0, which we're done. The left and right padding is to 1 rem, which is done. Now we need to change the H2 so that the color is the same dark blue used earlier. So there's the color. So let's do that. We'll target the H2, set the color to the same dark blue, which is 0F163E. And then we want the font size to be 1.2 rem. So that'll be 1.2 times the font size in the HTML, which is 14 pixels. All right, so we've got that. And let's go check out our results. You see now that does fit quite a bit better. Next section is going to be the student photo. So that'll be this part here. And we want to, so you can see we set the padding and to 0 on the top and bottom, 1 rem on the right and left again. Now here we want to set the image so that its width is 110 pixels. We'll do that. And as with the Byne logo, it's going to scale the height proportionally, so you don't have to worry about that. We want to round the corners a little bit. So you'll notice, I didn't mean to close that. Let's look at that. So you notice the corners of the image are also rounded, so we'll fix that. Let's set the border radius to be about 20 pixels. And then we want a border around the photo, okay? So we want it to be 2 pixels wide in that dark blue. So we'll do border 2 pixels wide. We want it to be solid, and we want it to be that dark blue that we've been using. And that should constrain Mickey's photo and get us pretty close to where we want to be. Much better. Much better. All right. Now the final section is going to be the school name at the bottom of the card. So we want a section with the ID of school. Again, we use the type selector followed by the ID selector. All right, we want the section to be a footer across the bottom, the background color, that light yellow, so you can see that here. We want some padding on the top and the bottom, so around 0.25 and 0 on the left and right, so no padding on the left and right, because it's centered, we don't need padding. And then we want the border across the, we want to set the border radius, so the bottom left-hand and right-hand corners of the gold block element are rounded the same as the overall card. Otherwise, we would have, the gold bars, corners would overlap, and we'd have some sharp corners here while we had the nice rounded ones at the top. So it's very important that this section has the same radius of the corners as the overall card does. And then finally, we want to adjust the text so that the font color is the same dark blue again, so we'll just reuse that. We want the font family to be that Rooney Webb. Font size to be 1.2 rem, just like the student name at the top. And again, we want to center the text. So if we go look at our results now, we should be pretty much done. Here we go. So does that look like the example? It does. It looks just like it, except the Byne logo. Something's wrong with the Byne logo. Let's see if we can fix that. So there's the Byne logo. The width is 250 pixels. So I forgot to add the image selector there, which is why that didn't work out just so. Now, there we go. So does that look just like the example? Let's open up the example here, and then we'll go look at the student ID. It does. It looks identical. How about that? So there is how you complete this exercise. I hope you enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun building this assignment for you. And I encourage you to go back through and experiment with this. So change the colors. Try changing some of the, like the corner radiuses. Change the padding. Change the fonts. Change everything, Play with these different things and get to understand how they work. Okay, so It's only going to get more complex from here. Don't forget to commit with a message and then sync your work so that I can grade it. And I will see you in class.